She was a doctor. Twice when she was in danger, a mysterious man saved her. Later, she learned that he was a national agent. She was unexpectedly forcefully kissed by the agent. But still, she couldn't help falling in love with this man. The warm sunlight slanted in, spilling into the street corner cafe, spreading a gentle glow across the floor. With no clinic hours this morning, Chloe Pollard stole a moment of peace, ordering a rich latte and indulgently pairing it with the daily special. Holding her tray, she glanced around the cafe and eventually chose a seat in the corner by the window. However, just as she placed her tray down and hadn't even had the chance to sit, a dark shadow loomed before her, blocking most of the light. A thunderous roar followed, assaulting her ears. "Stinky woman. Caught you, didn't I?" A burly man with a buzz cut, dressed in all black with a gold chain around his neck, was flanked by two henchmen, also dressed in black, their arms covered in dragon and tiger tattoos. The whole scene looked like something straight out of a gritty crime drama. The sudden turn of events left Chloe at a loss for words. She couldn't react in time. What's going on? Is she being targeted by the underworld? The other customers in the cafe quickly scattered, afraid that 1 second too late would put them in harm's way. The aggressor's overwhelming momentum was palpable, but on the surface, Chloe didn't change her expression. However, a thin layer of cold sweat began to form on her forehead. She truly didn't remember where she had encountered these people, and she had no idea where she had offended them. There are so many patients that medical staff handle day and night, and if you add the patient's relatives and family members to the mix, it's not an exaggeration to say that over half of the faces seen each day are strangers. Expecting them to remember each one is asking too much. But after years of practice, Chloe also knows that, most of the time, people are only after one thing, a simple apology. "Sir, if I've offended you unintentionally before, I sincerely apologize." Simeon Jensen saw her immediately lower her head without any explanation, and his fury exploded in an instant. Slamming his hand on the table, he yelled, "You think I'm a 3-year-old? You think a simple sorry will get me to forgive you? Dare to slap me in the face? Get ready for broken hands and feet." But when he said that, she suddenly remembered. Late one night, 2 weeks ago, while driving home, she received an emergency call from the hospital and had to turn back to treat a batch of patients from a gang brawl. The moment she entered she found both sides of the fight, bloodied and battered, still shouting at each other. At that time, she had been working for more than 36 hours straight and was so exhausted that she couldn't manage a friendly demeanor. While stitching up a patient, the man complained about her slow movements and how much it hurt. The onlookers, hearing his complaints, immediately began shouting for the hospital director to come out and explain. Chloe, unable to tolerate it any longer, slapped the man on the stretcher right then and there, before sternly telling him, "If you don't want to die on my watch, tell them to sit outside and wait. If I don't teach you a lesson today, I'll take your last name." As soon as the words left his mouth, Simeon raised his hand, ready to pull her up from her seat and drag her away. But in the next moment, a powerful force grabbed his wrist from behind, and he was suddenly unable to move. The veins on his forehead throbbed violently. Simeon gritted his teeth and turned around, wanting to see who the hell this was, daring to stop him. Damn it. Who's the blind idiot this time? Simeon glared, his eyes locking with the man in front of him in midair. In stark contrast, the man who had suddenly intervened appeared calm, with a slight smile on his lips, radiating an air of nonchalance. Simeon gritted his teeth in anger, but before he could finish his warning, the man interrupted him in a calm voice, "I'd better let go of you, or you'll make me regret it, won't you?" With that, the man released his grip, frowned, and lightly wiped his palms, as if they were dirty. "I think you'd better take your people and leave," the man said, his lips curling into a faint smile. He leaned in slightly, his once warm gaze turning cold, filled with a chilling indifference as he whispered in his ear. Hearing the clear warning, Simeon, who had been in the underworld for years, knew all too well that drawing clear lines between enemies and allies wasn't always beneficial, especially when you didn't know much about your opponent. Despite his burning anger, he still raised his hand to pat the man's arm and said meaningfully, "We'll meet again." Watching the other person walk away, Jaden curved his lips into a slight smile. He then turned around, reached for the handkerchief from his chest, and offered it to her. "For you." Huh? The situation had developed far beyond her expectations, and Chloe was momentarily caught off guard. The man lightly tilted his chin. "Your shirt is stained." Hearing this, Chloe quickly lowered her head to check, only to discover that in the earlier chaos, her shirt had accidentally gotten stained. The dark mark stood out starkly against the pure white fabric. This was the shirt she had just picked up from the dry cleaners a few days ago. "Thank you." She frowned in frustration, accepting the man's gesture and hurriedly walking toward the restroom. Watching her flustered yet trying to maintain her composure, Jaden Cameron raised a hand, his long fingers brushing over his lips, a small, amused smile forming on his face. Chloe spent some time trying to remove the coffee stain from her shirt. When she finally came out of the restroom, she saw the man in his suit, sitting in the vacant chair across from her, leisurely watching the bustling scene outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. Every movement he made exuded an air of casual laziness. Feeling a bit puzzled, she slowly walked back to her desk. Just as she sat down, he turned his head, and their gazes met perfectly. After a moment, the phone in the inner pocket of his suit rang. Jaden shifted his gaze, answered the call, and said, "What's up? Boss, I've arrived." The man didn't respond, simply ended the call, stood up, and said, "I'm leaving first." Chloe was momentarily stunned. When she looked up, the man had already walked toward the door. She hurriedly caught up with him and called out, "Sir, wait a moment." Jaden stopped and turned to look at her. "Your handkerchief." He smiled slightly. "You can return it to me the next time we meet." Chloe was silent for a moment. "Then at least tell me your name." Hearing this, the man couldn't help but curve the corners of his eyes. After so many years, she finally asked,